What's up? How you doing? I'm Dan McCort. I've been a YouTuber for about 3 years, and the videos that get the most views by far, by an extreme amount, are the videos in which I do tutorials on stand-up comedy. So if that's what's in fashion, if that's what people want to see, if I'm getting tens of thousands of views doing stand-up comedy tutorials, I figured I would do something I wish my favorite comedians did. I would break down my album Humor Trafficking bit by bit and tell you as much as I can from what I remember of that album. The thing about this album that's different from most comedy albums you'll hear, there is no editing whatsoever. I got it from the people who taped it and posted it as is. There's no added laughter, there's no ums and ands cut out, there's no edits whatsoever. This is exactly how the show went. So, let's get started.
Now, he's a very funny comedian. He's traveled all over the country. He lived in New York City for 9 years performing. Now, he's one of my favorite working stand-up comics that there is today. You might have seen him on Extra with Mario Lopez. Give a big, warm round of applause for Dan McCort!
Thank you for the support. I appreciate it. Give it up for Dwayne, too. Dwayne. No, not like that. I meant sexually. Give it up for Dwayne. He could use some. You can find him online at meatymen.hpv/penicillin.
That joke, that's one of those jokes that you only come by from doing hours upon hours of stand-up comedy. Every time I get on stage, before I get on stage, I write some material about the venue or the show to make it seem like this is a one-time performance. This is the only time you're going to hear this material. It also makes it sound spontaneous, like what you're saying is what you're saying off the top of your head. So I've been using this joke on and off for probably about a year and a half or 2 years. Give it up for whoever the host is. No, not like that. I mean sexually. Give it up for him sexually. You can find Dwayne online at meatymen.hpv. Then I pause and I say /penicillin. So .hpv would be the punchline. /penicillin would be a tag. That's a second punchline that doesn't need a setup. Tags are great. The more tags you have, the better. The more energy you bring to the show.
This was originally going to be a video, but we didn't have the budget for it, so it turned into just being a CD for iTunes and Amazon and stuff. And now that I'm at the venue, I think it's totally appropriate because there's a great Fisher-Price light show going on here. I feel like if Anne Frank had a light show, this would be her light show. It's really, I don't know.
So that's a good way to start because I get a laugh off of making fun of the show itself. I'm glad this wasn't a video because it was just a dive bar of a comedy room. And the name Anne Frank is something I use spontaneously throughout my comedy all the time. So in this case, I said I feel like if Anne Frank had a light show, this would be her light show. That's not new for me. The light show part is new. It was just this particular venue, but saying Anne Frank for scenarios just always works. And you'll see this actually gets some applause. When there's only 35 or 40 people, when 5 or 10 people applaud, that's an applause break. So I said I feel like if Anne Frank had a light show, this will be her light show. This would be her light show, and I got some applause off of it, which is good. It builds energy.
I grew up in the 80s, generation where you could stab a classmate and still graduate on time. You know what I'm saying? No child left behind. We didn't have that. We left a lot of kids behind. Seriously.
Okay, so this had been the intended opening for this album or special for a long time. I had done it, and 2 years prior to taping this, I had started doing it, and I had done it enough to where I knew this opening was going to work, so I'd stopped doing it. It was just memorized. What you do to build... I talked to Bill Burr in New York back before he was famous after a show, and he said, you got to build material. You need more and more material. As soon as you do a special, they're going to ask you for your next special. You can never have too much material. So the way to build material is to get a joke that works well, write as much as you can on it, make it complete, meaning you've thought about everything you can for the joke, it works perfectly, then stop doing it, because you need time, stage time to work on building new material. So I had stopped doing this, and what I'm about to push play and you're about to hear is, the beginning is, I grew up in the 80s, a generation where you could stab a classmate and still graduate on time. The important thing about that joke that non-comedians or new comedians wouldn't realize is the word classmate makes or breaks a joke. You can't just say, I grew up in the 80s, a generation where you could stab somebody and graduate on time. You could stab somebody and graduate on time. It doesn't work. You have to say a generation where you could stab a classmate and graduate on time. I know it seems obvious, but new comedians or people, even regular comedians, wouldn't necessarily, even myself, I wouldn't necessarily think it needed to be classmate to work, but it does. It needs to be classmate. Where you could stab a classmate and still graduate on time. No child left behind. We didn't have that. Then the next line is, we left a lot of people behind. The funny thing about that line is, if I say we left a lot of people behind, there's no laughs. I have to fake a laugh myself, like I'm laughing at the idea, for them to laugh at it. So what you're going to hear is, no child left behind. We didn't have that. We left a lot of people behind. That's how I have to say it for it to work. And it works. You'll hear it.
We left a lot of kids behind. Seriously. We got that don't take candy from strangers speech, that lecture. We actually got that. You know who else got that, though? The strangers. It's not a...
So, the rest of the joke, don't take candy from strangers, gets a reaction. The weird thing about my humor is I know what people laugh at. I genuinely know where the laugh is coming from. But the funniest parts of my act, nobody seems to laugh at. And the funniest part of this joke for me is that we got that don't take candy from strangers lecture, but so did the strangers. I think that's an amusing thought, but the rest of the joke I don't find that funny, but the rest of the joke is what people laugh at.
It's not a hard code to crack. You're just like, hey kid, I don't have any candy. Get in the fucking truck.
That also kind of works because you say fucking truck, fuck, truck, rhymes, get in the fucking truck. I don't like to swear unnecessarily, but get in the fucking truck is a good place to swear, so I always put it in there.
I don't know. I said I don't have candy. What are you, stupid? Get in. My balls are dry. And it goes downhill from there. We're easing into it. Seriously. Then they'd be like, if you're getting picked on, say this. So you'd be like, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never. He's got a point. Everybody grab a rock. That was the 80s. I was born in...
That's one where if you're initially writing it, if you're getting picked on, say, sticks and stones may break my bones, I'd to change it to, if you're getting picked on, say this. And then you'd be like, sticks and stones may break my bones. That's just something I tried a couple times the first way and it didn't work, so I changed it to, if you're getting picked on, say this. And you'd be like, you'd assume cutting straight to, if you're getting picked on, say, sticks and stones may break my bones, and words. He's got a point. Everybody grab a rock. I figured it would work that way. It doesn't. You have to say, if you're getting picked on, say this. And you'd say, sticks and stones. That's the only way it works.
The 80s. I was born in 1980.
So this joke is, I was born in 1982. I'm the same age as AIDS. I'm not nearly as popular. This is a situation where when you're writing comedy, you don't want to sound like you're reading from a script on stage. So I always said, instead of saying I was born in 1982, I would say, I'm the same age as AIDS. Makes it seem like it just occurred to me, even though I've said it for years. And then I'm not nearly as popular. So I'm the same age as AIDS is what I call a false punchline. People think that's a punchline. They laugh, and then before they're done laughing, you say, I'm not nearly as popular. That's a real punchline. So it's like a false punchline, real punchline, or punchline tag if you want to do that.
I'm the same age as AIDS. I am. Not nearly as popular. Wish I had that popularity. I don't know, growing up, remember being a kid? Your parents could make you do it.
Okay, this joke, the only reason it's here at the beginning of the special is because I knew I was going to end the special with a joke that says, I knew I was going to end this special with a joke that said, where my parents, I talk about generational differences. So in the beginning, I talk about growing up in the 80s. At the end, I talk about getting older and my parents moved back in with me. Instead of me living with my parents, they're living with me. And I treat them with the same respect they treat me. And they're sleeping and I hit the lights and I'm like, shovel the driveway, spina bifida. You think you can just lay around my house just flatlining in a Craftmatic adjustable bed? No. Shovel the driveway. And don't fall over, because if you fall over and get snowed on, I don't want your daughter-in-law parking on you. Why? Why? Because I said so. That's how it was always going to end. So I wanted it to come full circle. So I needed to write a joke where, 'cause I said so, was the punchline. That way it calls back to it as the very last joke. So that's the only reason this joke is in the beginning. Because honestly, it's not that strong a joke. The first 'cause I said so joke.
With no reasoning whatsoever. Why? Because I said so. That always worked, right? Danny, siphon the sewage out of the septic system with a straw. What? Why? Because I said so. Could you imagine being treated that?
Okay, so that one was, I wrote that just for the alliteration and to use 'cause I said so. Danny, siphon the sewage out of the septic system with a straw. It's good alliteration. Doesn't get a big laugh, so I just cut straight to the second part.
That way as an adult, just like, oh, Mr. McCort, your son has hepatitis. What? Why? Because I said so. I don't know. It's a generational.
Got a bigger laugh than it normally does on this recording, but adds some momentum going into it.
It's a generational difference. I mean, younger kids, toys were different. Today they have these virtual.
Okay, so this joke every single time I did it differently. It was never written down the way I said it. Things were always put in a different place. Toys were different. Kids today have these virtual seizure-inducing overstimulators. We had blocks, just gray splintering cubes. It was like playing with yard work, like somebody swept up a furniture factory. Merry Christmas, kid, lumber. You want to play with lumber? That's how I remember it going. But all those lines moved around. Every time I did it, I said it differently. This joke here.
Seizure-inducing overstimulators. We had blocks, gray splintering cubes, like playing with yard work. You needed a tetanus shot just to play with it. Like somebody swept up a furniture factory. Merry Christmas, kid, lumber. Gonna play with lumber. We had sit and spin. That was the name of the toy and the directions. There you go, Danny, sit and spin. What'd I do? Fucking sit and spin.
That's another false punchline. Happy birthday, Danny, sit and spin. What'd I do? Fucking sit and spin. People laugh at that. I wait and then I say, that's how you were conceived. It gets a way bigger laugh.
That's how you were conceived. I don't know. I'm sitting there at 4. It's not unlike being a raging alcoholic.
This part I forgot to do all the time, and I can't call back to this later. This part, it's not unlike being a raging alcoholic at the age of 4, getting the spins. Later, I have a joke where I walk in the house and my mom's like, clean your room. And I'm like, I just walked in, give me a second. It's a mess, that's it, I need a sit and spin. That line, that's it, I need a sit and spin, is like, that's it, I need a drink. Only works if I say here, it's not unlike being a raging alcoholic. The problem is, I would always do the second part of the joke, that's it, I need a sit and spin. Never really got a laugh unless I say, if I relate it to alcoholism earlier, this part.
Alcoholic at the age of 4, getting the spins. We made our own toys. I made a sailboat. I took a saw to a 2x4 in our garage when I was 4 because we could still do that because nobody cared about our welfare. I made a sailboat with a nail for the mast, cloth for the sail. I played with it for like 5 years, just a fucking spiked 2x4. That was one of my toys. Like, I don't know why Danny's not doing well in school. Maybe it's because I come home to clean your room. I just walked in, give me a sit. It's a mess. That's it, I need to sit and spin.
Gets a big laugh if
Kids
I set
today
it up
have
earlier.
cell phones. It's totally different. We used to have to call the home phone and deal with the parents. Just like, you remember that? Yeah, that was rough. You had to be polite to them. You know, like, hey, Mrs. Baxter, can Kathy come out and smoke pot?
So we had to deal with the parents calling the home phone. The parents would pick up the phone. Hello? Hey, Mrs. Baxter, can Kathy come out and smoke pot? A secret about my act is whenever I write a bit, I write a real person's name, somebody who's in my life. That bit was initially about me calling an ex-girlfriend. And the night of the show, I had to change the name because I don't want to use real people's name in my act. So I changed it to Mrs. Baxter instead of my real ex-girlfriend's name.
Could she come out and reject my sexual advances till 3 a.m.? I don't know, hang on, Cat. Dan's horny and he has drugs. She'll be right there. Thank you, Mrs. Baxter. Kids today, text message. They have no social acuity whatsoever. Seriously. They'll start a conversation with you, then just...
This text messaging bit is one of those rare bits where I wrote it and the very first time I said it, it worked perfectly and I didn't change a single word. You'll find 98% of your jokes, or 95%, 1 out of 20 jokes is finished and bits, not jokes. Sometimes you write a perfect joke, but a bit is a lot of jokes on one topic. This text messaging bit was written fine the first time I told it worked, and I never changed it. I thought it was a fluke. I was like, wow, that went really well. I wonder what I'm going to have to fix later.
They'll start a conversation with you, then just leave in the middle of the conversation they started. I got a text like, hey, Dan, what's going on? I'll be like, no.
This one, the kids with cell phones have no social acuity. They'll start a conversation with you, then leave in the middle of the conversation they started. Like, hey, Dan, how's it going? I'm like, not bad. Do you want to do something? And then you don't hear from a week. Like, sorry, I bought a dog. That line, sorry, I bought a dog, was never meant to be a punchline. It's just some shit I threw in there the first time I said, and it got a laugh, so I kept it in. In the middle of the conversation they started. I got a text like, hey, Dan, what's going on? I'll be like, nothing much. You want to hang out? Then you don't hear from them for 2 weeks. Like, sorry, I bought a dog. I don't know why people laugh at that. I got this text. This is a true story. I got this text at 2 in the morning that said no. This actually happened verbatim. Nobody believes me, but everything I don't lie about anything in my act unless I acknowledge it as a lie. It's just a policy of mine. So this text interaction actually happened one time. About 1.5 years ago, middle of the night, like 2 a.m., didn't recognize the number. This actually happened verbatim. I open up the text, it just says no. That's comforting. Unsolicited. So I open up the text, it just says no. I'm like, that's comforting. Unsolicited disapproval. That line, unsolicited disapproval, is one of my favorites. I just like that, unsolicited disapproval. I got the word unsolicited from Doug Stanhope, said it somewhere, and I've used it. I used to use it in this bit. I just like that word, unsolicited whatever, but here it's unsolicited disapproval. Somebody just texted me no. Unsolicited disapproval. So I wrote back, I don't take no for an answer. So I wrote back, I don't take no for an answer. There's actually more to that joke. I don't remember all of it, but I don't remember the rest of the joke, but I cut it off there because people started applauding. And if you get an applause break, that's kind of the high watermark, so I just moved on. Usually there's a longer exchange, the actual text where I'm like, I'm coming over, and they're like, sorry man, I can't. And I'm like, too late, my pants are off and I'm on the way. There's like a couple other lines. I just cut them out on the spot because people are clearly applauding. Yeah, you could send a text out into the atmosphere like it's Facebook, you know? Just do it, go home for fun, just text a random number. I don't care. When I say just do it, just go home for fun. I don't point like this when I pick somebody out in the audience, I do this. But I'm like, do it, just go home and do this. I always pick somebody out to make it relevant so people can actually picture that person doing what I'm saying. What anybody thinks I'm not having an abortion. People be like, I think you have the wrong number. Be like, sorry, I'm drunk. I don't think you should be drinking. I don't think you should be telling me how to drive my car. Yeah, pull over and get an abortion. What is this, Mexico? No, wrong number. You already said $200 for the meth, motherfucker. No, wrong number. This is Dave. No names, moron. Thank you. So that was the end of the text messaging bit, but all those lines were written as is. No amendments, no changes, no additions. And it ends pretty well. This is Dave, no names, moron, like I'm in some high-profile drug exchange. No names. What else? But at this point in the set, everything's going well. And as long as I stick to the script, the album's going to come out fine. I was really comfortable. I got an applause break at the end of the bit. They're clearly on board with what I'm doing. We have a synchronicity going on. I don't know if they knew that was the end of the bit, but they seem to because they gave me an applause break there.
We'll put you on speakerphone. I hate that. By a round of applause, who hates getting put on speak?
Oh, it is good to do. Sometimes you can ask the audience by a round of applause who hates this or who does this, because the name of the game in comedy is call and response. You don't have comedy if they're not responding to you. So if you say by a round of applause, it reminds people to clap. And give noise back to the comedian. Because it's the exchange that is comedy. If I was up there alone just talking, it wouldn't be comedy. It would be a monologue. It wouldn't be funny.
You're fun. I hate it. It's the worst. I hate it. It's the worst. Let it be known this is going to be out there on iTunes and wherever. Just stop putting people on speakerphone. I ruin it immediately. Like my friends are like, Dan, I'm driving right now. I got you on speakerphone. I'm like, there's no fucking Latinos in the car, is there? Okay, Dan, you are off speakerphone. There used to be payphone.
There's a thing I say here that I thought of that day. There used to be payphones. There were 25 cents, then 50 cents, then they disappeared like a hooker. I was watching a lot of Forensic Files. I thought that line would work. You could see here it's the only joke in this set that doesn't get anything. Obviously, you don't really put in new jokes when you're filming a special or an album, but, I tried it, it didn't work.
Yeah, there were 25 cents, then there were 50 cents, then they disappeared like a hooker. Yeah, that's what it was. And you could make collect calls. You could call somebody and bill them. This was every day in middle school for me.
This joke only works if I do my mom's voice at the end. Now! She doesn't sound like that, but now! The fact that I say it that way really gives the joke the punch it needs.
Hello, you have a collect call from Mom, it's me, I'm at CBA, pick me up, don't accept the charge. Do you accept the charges? Now! It's the way you beat the system. We don't own stock in AT&T. I don't know. That was my mom. I moved back in with my parents recently. I'm using the word recently very loosely. I moved back in with my folks. They're great people.
This bit here, I moved back in with my parents, where I'm talking about living with my parents. This whole bit, living with my parents, was written for, I auditioned for America's Got Talent, and this whole bit was written for that. And I didn't get the part. If you notice, that's why I still live with my parents.
Very loosely. I moved back in with my folks. They're great people. They have mobility issues, though. They can't go grocery shopping because I take their car with.
So that's the punchline. They have mobility issues. They can't go grocery shopping. Why? Because I take their car without asking. People laugh at that. My sense of humor is the next line. It's kind of hard to get milk when your car's at my pill dealer's house. That's what I find funny. It doesn't get as much of a laugh, though.
It's kind of hard to get milk when your car's at my pill dealer's house. Seriously, living with your folks as an adult, you could have conversations so counterproductive they could lower your sperm count. It's unreal.
That's just a great comedic thought, one of my best, if I will pat myself on the back. Living with your parents, you could have conversations so counterproductive they could lower your sperm count. I don't know, I just like the way that thinking. Like a conversation could lower your sperm count, as if. Here's
a regular one. I'm going to bed, but you woke up at blank in the afternoon. Look, nothing good can come from me being conscious. So it's either take 14 Ambien or set shit on fire. By the way, I bought a new white noise machine that sounds like lesbians fucking. Don't walk in. I don't mute my porn, man. I'm a grown adult. Shit. Here's an annual one around this time of year. My mother, why don't you get a job at the state fair? Mom, when carnivals metastasize, they turn into state fairs. Thank you. Yeah, that's just like asking me, hey, you want to go put sawdust on barf? No? You want to go hand out softballs to drunk people? People too drunk to operate softballs?
That one I had to edit for some show. Forgot what it was. We're filming for something, and I said, when carnivals metastasize, they turn into state fairs. That's another great comedic thought. When carnivals metastasize, the beauty of comedy is that you find these words and put them in places they shouldn't be. Metastasize is the spread of cancer. So I say when carnivals metastasize, they turn into state fairs. Like carnivals get bigger, they turn in, but I call them cancerous by saying metastasize. But I actually couldn't use that word on some show. I couldn't think of what show it was. We were filming, I couldn't use the word metastasize.
No? You want to go sweep up cigarette butts for a local country music band? No. I don't work at the state fair because I'm not...
So this part is, I don't work at the state fair for a bunch of reasons. I'm not drunk. My parents aren't related. I've never stabbed a rat with a nail on a stick. I don't live in a house with brakes. It's a list of like hick-like activities that I've never done, and I think this one also gets an applause break. So keeping the energy up, the whole notion like I have them, as long as you keep pumping out punchlines regularly, you'll keep them on board. That notion works. Get them and then just sustain it.
I don't work at the state fair because I'm not qualified. I'm not drunk. My parents aren't related. I've never stabbed a rat with a nail on a stick. I've never lived in a house with brakes. Like, Mexicans aren't stealing my jobs. I don't buy food at a garage sale. I could go on. It's ridiculous. I appreciate that. My dad's retired. He's a writer. My father retired. He was a doctor. Well, like the doctor, those doctors, I should know this. Those doctors that exploit young, naive people. Professor. That's it. So.
One person clapped. It was a friend of my father's. So I said my father was a doctor that exploits young, naive people. Professor. And my father's friend, Jerry, was in the audience, and he clapped at that one.
Languages. He always spoke to us as though we had a doctorate in language.
This one I always like to correct people on. He always spoke to us as though we had a doctorate in linguistics, which is true. Even as a child, my father spoke to me as though I was well-read, even though I'd never read anything. And I say by us, I mean my sister and I. And I can prove that he was a doctor in linguistics because when I said us as in my sister and I, it should have been my sister and me. People always screw that one up. You can figure out if it's my sister and I or my sister and me by just taking out my sister and leaving yourself. He always spoke to me, not he always spoke to I. That's a trick to I and me.
Linguistics. Us as in my sister and I. And I can prove it because when I said us as in my sister and I, it should have been my sister and me. So clearly, I live with somebody in the languages department. I remember we were driving through Hoboken in a station wagon, so that puts you in the time frame. And my mom pointed out the window. My dad grew up in Hoboken. Mom pointed out the window at a nice brownstone. She's like, that's where Frank Sinatra grew up in. My dad was like, kids, your mother's a veritable font of misinformation. To which I said, I'm 5. Yeah.
That joke is true. My dad said, kids, your mom's a veritable font of information. It's true. My father said that when I was a kid, and I memorized it. Your mom's a veritable font of misinformation. Like, who the fuck speaks that way? To a 5-year-old especially. And that line to which I said, I'm 5, was never in my act. I mean, this night is the only night I ever remember saying that line, to which I said I'm 5, and it gets an applause break. So, just good night.
Couldn't you just get drunk and beat us like a well-adjusted family?
Can you just get drunk and beat us like a well-adjusted?
As a kid, though, if you have kids, the easiest way to figure out how to waste your life, and this applies to all mothers, just go up to your mom and say, Mom, I'm bored. She'd be like, why don't you go organize your button collection according to size and color? Why don't you go check the Encyclopedia Britannica for mistakes? They make mistakes, you know. Was I a mistake, or are you just not putting any ideas into this? Like, I don't know. When I have kids, I hope my kids come up to me, Dad, I'm bored. There's a can of gas in the garage. Keep it away from the house.
Was I a mistake? Didn't get a laugh.
Dad, I'm bored. You have an aluminum baseball bat. Go break something. Destroy it. Go steal the mail from the neighborhood. You're young enough to get away with that. There's no reason to be bored. I don't know. I love my family. I want to go on to Ancestry.com to figure out my lineage. Their commercials are terrible. I don't know who's marketing them. Stupid commercials. If you've seen them, it was like, this whole time I thought I was white. Turns out I'm white. Yep. Just like a...
This bit, Ancestry.com was another bit that really didn't need many changes. It's a long setup, but the act out, the punchline is an act out. An act out is where you set up a scenario and act like the people in the scenario. So you set up a scenario and then it becomes a play where you're playing all the characters. This act out took a while to memorize, but it was always well received. And this is the last joke. Ancestry.com is the last bit I'm going to do in this session. We'll pick up exactly where we left off as I break down the rest of this album. But Ancestry.com, long setup, act out killed. So remember, the longer the setup, the more punchlines you need, or the bigger the punchline. If you go a long period setting something up, it better pay off. It better be worth all the time invested in setting up the idea. So this is the Ancestry.com bit.
.com to figure out my lineage. Their commercials.
Oh, and by the way, I did do the DNA test, and I got my results back, and it turns out I am 18% sub-Saharan African. Didn't know that. I'd have guessed because my mom looks African American, but I wasn't sure.
They're terrible. I don't know who's marketing them. Stupid commercials. If you've seen them, it was like, this whole time I thought I was white. Turns out I'm white. Yep. Just like everybody else on TV. So, it's a social statement. I don't know. I want an honest Ancestry.com commercial. Something a little more racy, you know? Something like, I went on to Ancestry.
Okay, so that was the whole setup. It wasn't a huge investment, but it's enough to need something substantial. Here's the act out. Starts out, it's a crescendo of an act out. It just gets more and more energy as you go on. And the hard part about this act out is there's tons of punchlines, but I have to keep talking through people laughing. So I get louder, they get louder, I get louder, they get louder. And that's the whole goal, is to get more energy into the room. So I always felt odd about this act out because I'm talking through people wanting to laugh.
Ancestry.com, and I was surprised to find out my great-grandfather raped a bearded midget on a hot dog cart so gypsies could steal wieners. Then he sold the afterbirth at a flea market to Klan members. My great-grandmother's the first known person to get pregnant by...
This is the first line that gets the real laugh. My great-grandmother's the first known person to get pregnant by giving a blowjob. That's usually the first line that gets a big laugh. But I have to keep talking. I can't let him laugh.
Giving a blowjob, my uncle intentionally asphyxiated his bottleneck goiter head in the ass of a three-legged Clydesdale at a Budweiser rodeo. My fucking aunt bit the head off a snake in a Pearl Jam video, then ran amok stabbing quadriplegics at a breathing tube convention. She was found hanging nude from a jungle gym at an orphanage. My grandmother drowned a nursery in a sewage bog on Christmas, and she was married to the original guy who fucked the AIDS monkey. And I'm Scottish.
Okay, so that, one last thing I want to mention. That act out, so you can see there's more laughter, I add more, I keep going, the punchlines get more ridiculous. My uncle intentionally asphyxiated his bottleneck goiter head in the ass of a three-legged Clydesdale at a Budweiser rodeo. My aunt bit the head off a snake in a Pearl Jam video, then ran amok stabbing quadriplegics at a breathing tube convention. Like, anybody goes to breathing tube conventions, like those exist. But the one thing that happened here that was different that I always felt odd about was I could usually do that big long act out, and before the applause break I could usually say, oh, and I'm Scottish. In this situation, they applauded before I got to the tag, which is, oh, and I'm Scottish. Like, I give all those ridiculous scenarios, and I'm Scottish. They applauded first, so that was a little different. It's kind of like a bonus punchline. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll pick up here in the next part of the analysis of humor trafficking. I'm Dan McCort. Thanks for watching.